The Gilded Age is produced by Universal Television and brought to you by HBO of Warner Media. All characters, plot points, and footage are property of HBO. The Gilded Age is a brand new drama airing exclusively on HBO Max. Join your friends at Free Tours by Foot as we take you through New York City, showing you actual locations from the show, locations in New York City the show is based around, discuss plot points, and go over the actual history of all of the events of the Gilded Age. And remember to book your tour with freetoursbyfoot.com the next time you visit New York City or any one of our other locations. And now, on to Katherine.
Hi everyone, I'm Katherine with Free Tours by Foot. Today I am here on 5th Avenue and we're going to be talking about one of my new very favorite shows, The Gilded Age on HBO. If you are anything like me, you are watching this show and you are loving it. If you are not already watching it, I highly encourage you to start. This show is fantastic. The writing, the storyline, the sets, the costumes are absolutely spectacular. Some of my very favorite actors are in this show. And to top it all off, it is, in my opinion, about one of the most interesting eras of New York history. So this is just the start of a video series that we're going to be producing. We will have new videos coming out to coincide with the episodes as they're being released. We don't know what's coming either, so we'll be watching along with all of you. Please drop in the comments below if you're watching the show, if you're loving it, who your favorite characters are, what parts of the storyline you're liking the best, and we'll see if we can accommodate some of your favorite things about the show in our videos. So to start off with, The Gilded Age, the title of the show, is also the name of the era in history. And the Gilded Age happened throughout a large part of the United States, but this particular story is set in New York. And to me, no city better encapsulates everything about the Gilded Age than New York. So when was this time period? Roughly speaking, you're talking about the era after Reconstruction, after the American Civil War, after Reconstruction. Most people would put the start in the 1870s, and then this era goes all the way through 1900. Well, you'll actually hear some conflicting things regarding what the end of the Gilded Age was. Some people will say the turn of the 20th century. Some people will say that the Gilded Age continued all the way up until the outbreak of the First World War. Whichever school you happen to be in, I would definitely say, in my opinion, while there were some changes that were happening around the turn of the 20th century that were very different to the Gilded Age, mostly socio-political changes, a lot of the excesses of the Gilded Age, the architecture, the lifestyle, the entertaining, a lot of that did continue past the turn of the 20th century and then all the way up until the start of the First World War. Now, if you're watching this show, you might be sitting there and watching the absolute decadence of this era and the behavior of these people and these societal rules and kind of petty rivalries and thinking this all has to be made up. Well, you know what they say, the truth is sometimes stranger than fiction, and that is absolutely true of the Gilded Age. If you've been sitting here watching this and saying this can't be real, actually, some of it is. Now, the story is fictional, and the two families at the center of the story, the Van Ryns and the Russells, are fictional, but they very much embody two very real factions that existed in the Gilded Age, and a lot of that plays out in the show right behind me at the corner of 61st Street and 5th Avenue. So in the world of the show, you have this fabulous opening. You see sheep bleating in a much more pastoral Central Park, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, and you have two families living at this corner. On the south side of the street, you have the stately brownstone home of the old money Van Ryns, and on the north side of the street, you have the brand new marble palace that has been built by the new money Russell family. So while these two families are fictional, they were written for the show. Like I said, what they embody in the storyline, absolutely very, very real thing in the Gilded Age. And really, a lot of things about some of these characters, including the Russells themselves, seem to me to be very much based on real people that existed in the Gilded Age, and we'll talk more about that later on as well. One of the best places to find kind of the last remnants of the Gilded Age in New York is on the Upper East Side. You kind of have to go looking, and it's certainly not to say that any of these palaces that were built at the time are still being used as private homes. Most of them aren't. A lot of them are consulates or they're museums. Some of them have been subdivided into apartments, but they are there if you know what you're looking for. And I'm personally so excited to see what direction they're going to take with some of these characters in the show. Not just with the Van Ryns and the Russells, though I do think we are in for some really fun storylines with that old money, new money clash. But as we start to get to some of these other characters, like Peggy Scott's character, I think we're going to see a lot of interesting things develop with that, as well as with some of the characters that you're seeing that are being portrayed by the servants living in these two houses, which if you've watched closely, you might have noticed you're seeing really different things in the two homes as far as servants. At the Russell house, they have this army of staff and they're wearing full livery uniforms, just like they're in a grand palace in Europe. At the Van Ryn household, you see a much smaller staff, and they aren't, outfitted in these grand uniforms. So what you've seen so far in the show of the Gilded Age has really shown a lot of the excess that is associated with the era, and that is absolutely one of the things most associated with the Gilded Age is this absolutely absurd wealth, and a lot of that came from just great industrial progress, probably most notably the railroads. But there were two sides to this coin. While most people think of the absolutely excessive wealth, this was also a time of very severe economic inequality. While you did have people like in real life, the Vanderbilts and the Astors, in the show, the Van Ryns and the Russells, living this very high lifestyle, you had a lot of people living in absolutely abject poverty. And you had a lot of issues with the time as well, even with the people who had made a lot of money. We'll talk more about that in one of our future videos, but by today's standards, the ways in which that wealth was accumulated would not be considered okay. Today, a lot of this was done on the backs of very poorly paid laborers, or they were taking advantage of very lax regulations at the time. So that's why the area is called the Gilded Age. Gilded Age is a reference to the fact that it looked very shiny and very opulent on the outside, but that was just a sheen. That was something that was covering some very real problems that were going on that would start to be addressed in the next era, the Progressive era. So as you can see, the corner of 61st and 5th Avenue today looks nothing like it did in the TV show. And that's because that section of 5th Avenue, as well as further south of there, though at one point it would have been absolutely crammed with these giant Gilded Age mansions, most of them in that part of town do not exist anymore. But that doesn't mean that there aren't any of these houses still in New York City. In fact, that's why I'm standing right now at the corner of 5th Avenue and 75th Street. You can see right behind me on the corner, there is a big Gilded Age era house that I think actually looks a lot like the house that the Russells are shown to live in. So the Russells in the Gilded Age are definitely meant to represent the new money side of things in that era. And they've actually already specified that they made their money in railroads, which was very common for those new money Gilded Age families. At the start of the Gilded Age, old money New Yorkers and new money New Yorkers did tend to live slightly differently from one another, and I think that that's really well encapsulated in the show. The Van Ryns, shown to live on the south side of 61st Street, live in a different style home. It is much more understated. It's a brownstone, which was very common at the time. And while it's very nice on the inside, it's certainly a mansion and it's certainly larger than anything any New Yorker I know lives in today, it doesn't look like a palace the way the Russells' home does just across the street. The Russells' home is this giant white marble palace, and there's gilding and beautiful interiors inside, and it certainly was built to rival the interiors of any palace in Europe at the time. And that tended to be more common in the early part of the Gilded Age. This story starts in 1882 because a lot of these new money families were desperately trying to edge their way into the very upper echelon of New York high society. And so they felt the need to really showcase their wealth. They, in essence, felt they had more to prove than the old money families did. The old money families at first kept their slightly more understated homes, but as you got later on in the Gilded Age, most of them fell right into step with everyone else, and they too started building elaborate palaces on Fifth Avenue. So for most of Caroline Astor's time as the reigning society hostess of the Gilded Age, she lived in her brownstone down at 34th Street and Fifth Avenue. But in the 1890s, she finally made the move uptown. As so many people were doing, the area down around 34th Street was becoming less fashionable by the day. So she built a new, very elaborate mansion here, right behind me at the corner of 65th Street and Fifth Avenue. It was actually a double mansion. Half was for Caroline Astor and half was for her son, John Jacob Astor IV. And inside that house, she had a ballroom that could fit 1,200 people, many, many more than the famous 400 people that fit in her 34th Street ballroom. So if, like me, you are loving the show The Gilded Age, make sure you subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We do have plans to release these as a series of videos as the new episodes come out so that we can kind of sync our content alongside what you're going to see in the show. We're watching the new releases just like you are, so we're keeping our plans flexible. But some of the things we would like to talk about would be a little bit more about some of the real people that you're seeing, such as Stanford White, the architect, as they develop Peggy Scott's storyline a little bit more. We would love to explore her world, the part of Brooklyn that she came from, a little bit further. Some of the social rules and customs that you're gonna see, like coming out balls, calling cars, this very complex structure that people were expected to abide by. We'd like to explore all of that further. But if you have anything in particular that you're seeing in the show that you want to see covered, put it in the comments below and we'll see what we can do. Also, if you are loving this and you want to learn more about this, I highly encourage you, if you're planning a trip to New York anytime soon, to consider taking a Pay What You Wish walking tour with free tours by foot, because to truly understand the Gilded Age, to understand this world that you're seeing on screen, there's a lot of context that you would need about New York City in general, about various parts of New York City and different pieces of history, because there's a lot going on. There was a lot coming together in this time period. Some of the tours you would want to consider, if you wanted to learn more about the railroad barons, take our tour of Grand Central Terminal, learn all about the Vanderbilt family and how they amassed all of this wealth. Midtown Manhattan would be a great tour. There's a lot going on in the show The Gilded Age about the shift that you're seeing, what had once been the fashionable part of Manhattan slowly starting to move uptown, and a lot of change and transition, and you would hear a lot about that on our Midtown tour. Central Park is shown in both episodes 1 and 2 of The Gilded Age, and I think we're probably going to see more of it. We offer tours of Central Park, multiple sections of Central Park, and you could check those out as well. Whichever one you choose to do, it will definitely give you more context, more of an idea of what this world was all about. So we highly encourage you to take advantage of it.